Okay, full disclosure, I'm recording this audio on July 12th. It's 4:50 p.m. PST here, and one of the two trending names on my Twitter feed is none other than Pierre-Luc Dubois, Winnipeg Jets center, and an apparent Montreal Canadiens target. You know who else is trending on my Twitter timeline? It is the name of another center at the NHL level, another two-way guy, and somebody whose last name starts with the letter D. It is Dvorak, actually. Both Dubois and Dvorak have been trending all day on my Twitter feed, and Montreal Canadiens fans everywhere, from the coast all the way to the inlands, we have been discussing about these players with some sort of sentiment of fear in our eyes. I don't know. There are some people that are scared about it. There are other people that are a lot more optimistic about it. What the heck am I referring to? Let's go over the tweet that kind of set this entire fire ablaze right here. This was tweeted out by Martin Leclerc yesterday in the middle of the hot summer afternoon. Or, excuse me, it was the morning here in Vancouver, the afternoon in Montreal, Quebec. I'm told the Canadiens are still working with the Winnipeg Jets with the goal of closing a deal that would bring Pierre-Luc Dubois to Montreal in the long run. The talks almost paid off at the draft last week. Now, before we go over onto his second tweet, let's just refresh everybody's memory if you were not aware. Pierre-Luc Dubois was a former third overall pick at the NHL's Entry Draft in 2016. He was taken by Columbus, and he was a guy that was noted for his two-way capabilities as a big center who could play defensively as well, while also producing points. He maxed out at 61 points in 82 games played for those Blue Jackets before inevitably falling out with the team, having a whole bunch of conflict with Tortorella, and eventually getting sent over to Winnipeg in a pretty interesting trade that involved Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. Dubois, the next few seasons, had some pretty okay games here and there. He didn't stand out too well in his first year in Winnipeg, but his most recent season, which happened to be his second year with the club, saw him post up another 60-point campaign in 81 games this time. He also had 28 goals. Now, for Dubois, there has been a sentiment that has been just kind of creeping around there, talking about this guy and his future, because he does need a new contract for 2022-2023 at the time of me recording this audio, and there has been an apparent sentiment that says that he wants to go to UFA status in 2 years, by the time he is 26 years old, and by the time he has the right to potentially exercise that sort of status quo. Long story short, Pierre-Luc Dubois does not want to play in Winnipeg, and this has been a conversation that we've brought up several times, how Dubois in the QMJHL requested a trade from his team and tanked his value, how in Columbus he didn't want to play for Columbus and it was so evident watching his gameplay on the ice that he did not want to be there, how in Winnipeg, now we're seeing a similar pattern here. Pierre-Luc Dubois, for 3 of the 4 teams that he has been a part of most recently, has said that he does not want to play for these squads, and he has inevitably ended up getting traded, or in Winnipeg's case, he likely will get traded soon because of it. And with the sentiment that we have seen that apparently he does want to play in Montreal, it makes things very intriguing as to where the Canadiens can go with this conversation. This is the follow-up tweet from Martin Leclerc after he talked about Pierre-Luc Dubois yesterday. With a center line consisting of Dubois, Suzuki, and Dach and Evans, the rebuild could be quicker than expected. Now, because this tweet was formulated the way it was, you could see Pierre-Luc Dubois, Nick Suzuki, Kirby Dach, Jake Evans. These are 3 top 6 caliber centers, and Jake Evans, who is a very good third-line center as well. But the one that is missing out is Christian Dvorak. I mean, Ryan Poehling is kind of missing there too, but let's talk about Christian Dvorak for the most part, because for all intents and purposes, this is the guy that was the quote-unquote second-line center for the Montreal Canadiens in 2021-2022. He was a pretty good player in junior, very good alongside of Mitch Marner and Matthew Tkachuk for the London Knights, but he never really had the same level of success as Marner and Tkachuk did at the NHL level. Playing for Arizona, Christian Dvorak was pretty alright, and eventually he got sent over to Montreal in a trade that a lot of people saw was a pretty good move to replace Jesperi Kotkaniemi, but this recent season of play saw Christian Dvorak not really perform all too great under Dominique Ducharme. Now, he did sort of resurge under St. Louis, but then again, so did everybody else. And now, heading into the next few months, it's going to be interesting to see where the Canadiens decide to go with Dvorak, because even without this Dubois trade, you still have Nick Suzuki and Kirby Dach already on your team. Suzuki is pretty much the de facto top-line player for the Canadiens, and Kirby Dach has the potential to take over in that role too. For Christian Dvorak, I mean, his name has kind of been tossed around in a whole bunch of trade rumors lately anyway, so if he were to move on from Montreal after only one season, it wouldn't really surprise me if that was the case. Now, is this necessarily a Dvorak for Dubois trade that we have in the horizon? Not necessarily, no. I wouldn't say that for sure. You could definitely see a Christian Dvorak trade with some other team and then make another external move to acquire Pierre-Luc Dubois in a different transaction, but just for the sake of talking about both of these players, I decided to include them both in this video. For Pierre-Luc Dubois, though, I still have that little spidey sense inside me going off that says, man, I really don't know if this would be the most beneficial thing to do. Now, of course, Pierre-Luc Dubois or Christian Dvorak, who's the better player? Dubois is, of course. There would be an undisputed improvement to the roster if that was the case, but there are a few questions that I have. Firstly, is that improvement to the roster good enough to the point that you could justify getting a Pierre-Luc Dubois onto your team? And secondly, what does this mean for the 2023 draft? Firstly, let's answer the question of how much of an impact is this player going to have, and is that impact justifying the acquisition of him in the first place? Because I still feel in my head that there's some sort of a spidey sense going off saying, yeah, I don't know if Pierre-Luc Dubois himself is the best kind of personality for this team. They're young guys on the squad, they're growing, developing players, and for Dubois, I mean, he was drafted in 2016, so he's already, 24, 25 years old, and he still has had these same issues ever since he was 17 about not wanting to play for teams and not being all too committed and eventually jumping from ship to ship to ship, from Cape Breton to Boisbriand to Columbus to Winnipeg, and now Winnipeg to whichever other team he wants to go to, now Montreal or any other squad that offers him money in free agency. We had said this in the video before, but there's never been a time where I've seen a player who is an RFA playing on an RFA expiring contract say to his team verbally, yeah, I kind of want to go to UFA status in 2024. Like, firstly, the planning for that is so off. Secondly, a lot can happen in 2 years, so who are you to go out there and say that right away? There must be something in the water in Winnipeg, because Stars really don't want to go out there and play, according to the Laines and the Dubois that we have seen. And secondly, when it comes to the tank, quote-unquote, the Montreal Canadiens are not really supposed to be all too great of a team next year anyway, especially when you consider the fact that their best players, Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, etc., are not really at their best right now. You have yourselves a team that would get instantly better with Pierre-Luc Dubois, but is that benefit really going to help the team out in the long-term future? Would you rather see the Canadiens go through another bad season, let's say they finish, I don't know, 4th or 5th last, and then they miraculously win the draft lottery again? Would you rather have Connor Bedard after a year of suffering, or get Pierre-Luc Dubois now and finish somewhere in the 10 to 15 range in the NHL Draft in 2023? There are a few conflicting ideas that I feel when it comes to where the Canadiens could finish, how well the Canadiens could do next season, and the like if you do try to make a trade for Pierre-Luc Dubois. I mean, the way it's being presented here on Twitter by Martin Leclerc, it appears that that trade was pretty close, actually, at the 2022 NHL Draft. We knew that Kent Hughes the entire time was really trying to make a splash here, and he did that with trading away Romanov, getting Doc, and apparently trying to go for Dubois as well, but it really does intrigue me as to where the direction that the Canadiens will go in the short term if Dubois does indeed come over here. This is a tweet from Massimo that I think brings up a really good point. I'm saying it one time only, but if Kent Hughes acquires Kirby Dach and Pierre-Luc Dubois in his first offseason, then he's already accomplished more than Marc Bergevin did in 10 years as a Habs GM. Now, that is potentially strawman, who really knows? I mean, Weber for Subban was pretty big, Mikhail Sergachev for Drouin pretty big as well, but then again, none of those players are really Kirby Dach or Pierre-Luc Dubois, former 3rd overall picks. Oh my gosh, it's the 3rd overall pick curse. Talk about Galchenyuk, talk about Kotkaniemi, talk about Drouin, talk about Dach, talk about Dubois. Get all the 3rd overall picks here in Montreal over the span of 5 years. Talk in the comments all your thoughts about the idea of PLD heading over to Montreal and the Canadiens trying to make it work. Do you think Christian Dvorak is going to be on the move sooner rather than later because of this? Do you think he's going to be included in some sort of a Winnipeg trade? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.